Tom Cameron crazy.
Judd Huntley, David Brinkman, John Chen, Tom Brokaw.
Identity crisis. The names and social security numbers of millions of veterans stolen. How did it happen? Storm season. Tonight, the government predicts a busy one, as many as 10 hurricanes. Also tonight, new concerns about the levees in New Orleans. Fate of Barbaro, a catastrophe on the track, then hours of surgery. Now, what are the odds for this fragile champion?
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams. Substituting tonight, Campbell Brown.
Good evening. I'm Campbell Brown in New York. Brian is traveling tonight in Africa with Bono, the Irish rock star who has devoted much of his life lately to making the world aware of the crushing poverty and health problems there. We'll hear more from Brian in a few minutes. But we begin tonight with the stunning revelation from the Department of Veterans Affairs that the Social Security numbers of more than 26 million veterans have been stolen. All that information was taken from the home of a Veterans Affairs employee. How did it happen, and what can veterans across the country do to try to protect themselves? Details now from NBC's Jim McLeshevsky, who's at the Pentagon. Jim, good evening.
Good evening, Campbell. This highly sensitive information was stolen sometime earlier this month, putting tens of millions of U.S. veterans at great potential risk. It may be the biggest single case of identity theft in the U.S. Critical personal records, including the Social Security numbers of 26.5 million veterans, every veteran since the Vietnam War, have been stolen from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Attorney General Alberto Gonzales announced the FBI has launched a full investigation.
Right now we're focused on the investigation and doing what we can to help our veterans.
The government says the massive amount of computer data was stolen from the Maryland home of a VA analyst who had reportedly downloaded the information from a government computer and taken it home without authorization.
We have no reason right now to know that any of this information is being used for an illicit purpose, but we're not taking any chances.
The stolen information includes names, dates of birth, and Social Security numbers of the veterans and some spouses. Identity theft experts say the information alone could be devastating.
With just a name, a birthday, and a Social Security number, you can become another person. It's easy to open up credit cards, take out car loans, even buy a house, simply having those basic building blocks.
Veterans Affairs has designated a website, firstgov.gov, and set up a phone center, 1-800-FED-INFO, for information, but advises veterans to keep a close eye on their credit rating. But the head of the Veterans of Foreign Wars said today someone should be fired or prosecuted.
This is unconscionable that this could happen to America's veterans and their dependents.
The best case scenario is that the thieves didn't really know what they were stealing, but by issuing today's warning, they're sure to know it now. Campbell?
And Jim, is this an isolated incident or part of a more widespread problem at Veterans Affairs?
Well, this is an isolated incident, but the very magnitude of the problem, 26.5 million veterans, makes it very problematic. If the thieves themselves don't use the information, they could sell it to someone else who could run up huge accounts under phony, huge amounts under phony names, and really create a huge credit risk for those veterans even before they know what hit them.
All right, Mick, thanks very much. NBC's Jim McLeshevsky for us tonight. And now to a weather forecast that millions of Americans along the East Coast and Gulf of Mexico are watching with great interest. It is the latest government forecast for the hurricane season. NBC's Carrie Sanders has more tonight on how bad the experts think this year will be.
After 24 hurricanes and 11 making landfall in the United States in the past 2 years, today's prediction for this year's Atlantic hurricane season is unsettling. 13 to 16 named storms, 8 to 10 becoming hurricanes, 4 to 6 becoming major hurricanes with winds of 111 miles per hour or higher.
It's not all about the numbers. It just takes that one hurricane over your house to make for a bad year.
Why so much activity again? Scientists say ocean temperatures are 1 to 2 degrees warmer than usual. And 4,000 miles that way, in Africa, different wind patterns blowing east are not what's needed.
What we're starting to learn is that a lot of the features of the Saharan air layer can actually suppress hurricanes. You can kind of think of it as Mother Nature's hurricane suppressant.
On the Gulf Coast, where Hurricane Katrina caused more than $125 billion damage, survivors like the Gill family, who still live in a FEMA trailer, say they know statistically there's as good a chance a hurricane will hit them this year as last.
If you're not ready for a hurricane now, you never will be.
In Florida, there's already a rush on to prepare. No storms on the horizon, just tax-free shopping on supplies, encouraging residents to get ready for the next big one. Kerry Sanders, NBC News, Miami Beach.
And with that fresh reminder that hurricane season is rapidly approaching, New Orleans got some more bad news today. A new report from a group of scientists who say the biggest problems with the city's levee system are all man-made. Here's NBC's Mark Potter.
The scientists' report blames the levee failures on basic design and engineering flaws and decades of what they call dysfunctional government, more concerned about saving money than lives.
Efficiency was put ahead of safety, and costs were reduced, and the margins were too small. There wasn't much room for the uncertainty.
The report contradicts the Army Corps of Engineers' claim that high water overtopped the levees. It found the levees collapsed from within when the mix of sand and seashells used to make the levees washed away. Catastrophic erosion, which could happen again.
There are a number of sections that were weakened during Katrina that could fail this time around.
The Army Corps, racing to repair the levee, is telling the public it will be better than ever.
It's much more resilient, and they should have more confidence in their hurricane protection system.
But local residents are not so confident, and many officials and scientists are telling them their best option this year is evacuation.
Newly re-elected Mayor Ray Nagin says buses and trains will move out residents who don't have cars, but where they go is still being worked out.
That's one of the things we're going to have to get from the state.
Plans still being formed at a time when scientists say even a tropical storm could bring more flooding here. Mark Potter, NBC News, New Orleans.
The government tonight says it has found some isolated cases of price gouging, but no widespread pattern of it over the past year, since Hurricane Katrina hit the Gulf Coast and prices at the pump began to spike. In its report to Congress, the Federal Trade Commission says those high prices are the result of ordinary market forces, supply and demand. And New Orleans has another problem tonight, allegations of bribery against a Democratic Congressman, William Jefferson, whose offices were raided over the weekend by the FBI. The evidence against Jefferson, the government says, has been captured on videotape and in the congressman's freezer. NBC's Justice correspondent, Pete Williams now.
Congressman, would you talk to us, please?
Back in Washington today from Louisiana, William Jefferson said he has done nothing wrong and called it well over the line for the FBI to search the offices of a U.S. congressman.
I think it represents an outrageous intrusion in the separation of powers between the executive branch and the congressional branch, and no one has seen this in all the time of the life of the Congress.
Investigators say the FBI videotaped Jefferson outside this suburban Washington hotel last summer accepting a $100,000 bribe from an informant. Cold hard cash, investigators say, 90,000 of it later found in a freezer in Jefferson's house, wrapped in foil in Tupperware containers. For nearly 17 hours, from Saturday night until Sunday afternoon, FBI agents searched files and made copies of computer hard drives in Jefferson's office. 2 people have already pleaded guilty in a scheme to bribe the congressman, a member of Congressional African caucuses, payments they say he demanded to help them get contracts for providing internet service in Nigeria and Ghana. Investigators say Jefferson told the informant in a note how he wanted to be paid and said all these notes were writing to each other as if the FBI is watching. Today, some in Congress, including Bill Frist, the Senate Republican leader, said they're concerned about the FBI raiding a Capitol office. But federal officials say they acted only after asking for documents from Jefferson's office 8 months ago and getting nowhere. Pete Williams, NBC News at the FBI in Washington.
And we turn now to southern Afghanistan, where a U.S.-led military coalition says it has killed at least 20 Taliban fighters and perhaps many more in what is being called a successful air assault on a village there. Local authorities, however, say the bombing also killed and wounded about 30 civilians, including women and children. As we have been reporting, there has been a storm of new violence in that region over the past several days. Britain's Prime Minister Tony Blair made an unannounced visit to Baghdad today to show support for Iraq's new government named over the weekend. Blair also made it clear he wants Iraqi security forces to take more responsibility for protecting their country. Blair visits President Bush in Washington later this week. And before we go to break, we did want to let you know that NBC News is opening a Middle East bureau based in Beirut, Lebanon, to expand our coverage of that region and of Arab and Islamic nations at this critical time. NBC's Richard Engel, who has been NBC News' primary correspondent in Baghdad for more than 3 years now, will be our Middle East bureau chief. And when NBC Nightly News continues on this Monday evening in depth, Brian Williams in Africa with rock star and humanitarian Bono. How one of the world's biggest celebrities is using his fame to help the sick and hungry. And still ahead, the latest on Barbaro, the champion racehorse whose life-threatening injury has America on edge.
NBC News in depth tonight here in Africa. As we mentioned at the top of the broadcast, our day got started in Nigeria, a nation that makes up 1/5 the population of the entire continent of Africa. From there, it was here to Mali. All of it part of a tour organized by the Irish rock star Bono. It's looking into measures that have been funded to combat poverty and HIV, areas where he has raised money and awareness. In the heart of Nigeria, in an overcrowded school where there is no school on rainy days because of holes in the roof. On this hot sunny day, there were special guests. Gordon Brown, the man who in all likelihood will be the next Prime Minister of Great Britain, and a 46-year-old Irishman named Paul Hewson, better known by his nickname Bono.
What about sexual behavior? Do you teach on this subject? Do you teach people about HIV?
Bono asks the questions any investor would, and that's what he's doing here. He's checking up on the investment he's made, in time and in the massive amount of money he has raised.
So you would like to go to school?
Yes. What do you need the most?
A teacher at the school told me they need classrooms the most. They have just 9 rooms for 700 students ages 5 to 16. As Bono sees it, the message being taught here is also important.
They love America in there. They love the United Kingdom. They love Irish people. They love democracy. They have school classes about democracy. Not far from here, there are madrasas where they're teaching people, teaching kids like that age to hate us. This is a smart thing for us to be involved in, as well as a wonderful thing.
But these men soon learn from the teachers the problem at this school is more basic than that.
The boys inside the town, they pregnate our girls and refuse them to come to school, which is not good.
The problems, when added up, are staggering. Not nearly enough money for education. 40 million African children aren't being schooled. But the number 2 man in Britain has faith in the rock star from Ireland. Bono brought the U.S. Treasury Secretary to Africa 4 years ago. He boldly convinced the 8 wealthiest nations to forgive massive African debt. And he successfully lobbied President Bush for billions. Gordon Brown long ago became a believer in Bono.
Bono inspires. He changes people's opinions about what's possible. I think he has had a huge impact on public opinion right across the world. He doesn't actually seek the glare of publicity for so much that he does. He'll spend hours talking to people all over the world, but he wants to see everybody have the same chance that he's had.
Bono isn't known here.
My name is Bono, I'm a rock star.
As he puts it, not a lot of sub-Saharan radio stations play U2's music. They know him instead for what he has delivered. And on 3 hours sleep, it's onto the plane and off to Mali, a mostly desert nation with crushing poverty and few modern conveniences. While they still crush corn into meal the way they have for centuries, Bono also knows they are onto something by producing organic cotton.
people doing extraordinary things in Rwanda.
And while Bono is here to check on progress, there's still not enough to bail a nation like this one out of the situation it finds itself in. The man known as Bono, lead singer of the group U2, and a man passionate about the issues on the ground here in Africa. We'll take a break. We'll return from here later on in the broadcast, but first we'll be back with the story from the world of sports that has captured the attention of so many Americans. And then later, the scene we came across here today and what it may say about our two worlds.
An update now on a mine explosion that happened Saturday in eastern Kentucky, which left 5 miners dead. Investigators said today the 3 who died from carbon monoxide poisoning were using the exact air pack model as the Sago mine disaster victims. This despite the fact that the lone Sago survivor said those air packs failed when he talked about his experience about a month ago. One of the Kentucky miners involved in the explosion survived, and safety officials said his air pack worked properly. The Supreme Court ruled unanimously today that police do not need a warrant to go into a home if they believe someone inside is or could be seriously injured. The case involved police officers in Utah who saw a bloody fight through the window of a private home. Now to the racehorse that has been on the minds of a great many Americans after he broke down in the opening strides of Saturday's Preakness Stakes. Barbaro suffered a life-threatening injury on national television, and as NBC's Dawn Frantangelo tells us, his fate has become a national obsession.
An audience of millions watched as Barbaro's career was off and running, then suddenly over.
An astonishing development here. Barbaro's being pulled up.
His right rear ankle nearly shattered. This was Barbaro after 5 hours of surgery in a harness to prevent him from thrashing about and further injuring his leg. The surgery went well, but his chances are still 50-50.
It's the problems after surgery that usually lead to fatalities. The horse breaking down in his opposite foot, the foot that's bearing too much weight, that's a big problem. And infection.
A metal plate with 23 screws now holds Barbaro's ankle in place. At the Pennsylvania Animal Hospital where he's recuperating, well-wishers are leaving cards, even carrots.
Why'd we bring him something, babe? Make him feel better?
The story is the buzz of the industry. The racing magazine Blood Horse has had more traffic on its website than at any time in its 10-year history.
But Barbaro's story transcends the racing world. The odds-on favorite is now the nation's underdog, the best kind to root for.
Writer Julia Kelfie believes it's a lesson on just how fragile life is.
I think it's not only real concern about the horse, but some sort of association within ourselves about how it is to be brought down like that.
People identify with a kind of freedom and fierceness and grace that the horses embody.
If Barbaro recovers, he will likely bring in millions as a stud. He's already said to be flirting with mares at the hospital. Until then, he's getting the best medical care and tokens from a grateful nation.
I'm going to go give these to Barbaro.
Dawn Frantangelo, NBC News, New York.
There you go, Hank.
On Wall Street today, stocks started the week on a down note. The Dow was down almost 19 points. The Nasdaq lost 21 points on the day. New Orleans has had its share of bad news today, which we've already reported on, but there is a happy reunion to report as well. 19 Katrina evacuees are finally home. 19 black-footed penguins, to be precise. They were flown back to New Orleans from San Francisco and got the red carpet treatment on arrival. Their home, the Audubon Aquarium of the Americas, which was closed in the aftermath of Katrina, will reopen this weekend. And now we want to go back to Brian Williams in Africa. Brian?
Campbell, thanks. And coming up after a break, we will be back with the scene we stumbled upon in a tiny African village today and what it may say about us.
We close tonight with more from Brian Williams in Africa, where, as he wrote in his online blog today, it is so very difficult to look into the eyes of the children who are suffering. Here now, Brian has the story of one 7-year-old girl and the lessons she can teach us all.
She couldn't have been more than 7 years old.
she had methodically built a fire and has filled a bowl with oil, which was boiling. She then mixed the dough, as she apparently does every day, putting the dough in the oil and cooking up a sizable meal, apparently for her family. But her eyes told the story of maturity beyond her years. And even though this area is 10 hours away from New York by air, this scene illustrated our two different worlds. What was her American equivalent, a girl of 7 years of age, doing at that same time this afternoon?
Brian Williams reporting tonight from Mali. The next stop for Brian on his trip in Africa is Ghana, and he'll have that report tomorrow night. And that is our broadcast for this Monday night. Thank you for being with us.